When I was a child, my grandmother used to tell me bedtime stories about my uncles. And these stories always had same plot. One of my uncles was a hero, another one was a bad guy. And good uncle was always making good decisions. And these good decisions would always result with good outcomes in his life. On the other side, bad uncle was making bad, irrational choices. And these bad, irrational choices would, of course, result with negative outcomes throughout his life. So despite lacking a formal education, my grandmother seems to be a strong promoter of Big Five theory of personality. And she really fights for the idea that personality does not change over the time, and that personality is the one that determines outcome in our lives. The Big Five theory of personality is a widely accepted framework, which assumes that our personality is being defined with 5 personality traits, which are neuroticism, openness, conscientiousness, agreeableness, and extroversion. And these personality traits define how we behave, how we feel, how we think, and of course they define outcomes in our life. So here I am today, and I want to challenge hypothesis of my grandmother. Well, I also want to challenge hypothesis of Big Five theory of personality. And I want to challenge it in the context of sales. I want to challenge it in a way to assume that personality is maybe not that stable as previously thought. Or more specifically, that neuroticism is not a stable trait in terms of salespeople and their behavior. So now you may wonder, why sales? Well, there are many jobs out there, and sales is only one of those. But sales is one of the most common jobs out there. Because, for example, in 2022, out of 12 employed people in US, 1 was working in sales. So the context of this talk is in sales environment. And I need your help to try to kind of disentangle this environment. So can you please think about yourself as working in sales? But I kindly ask you not to think about yourself as someone who's working in business to consumer environment. You are not working in, let's say, Zara store. Please think about yourself as someone who is working in a very complex environment. Let's say that you are tasked to sell very complex products, very high-priced products to some corporations. So you are selling windmills, for example, or even better, you are selling cranes. The most complex cranes which are being used to build amazing skyscrapers in Dubai. So that's your task. And in order to do so, you spend months and months trying to do research about your potential customers. So you spend, let's say, about 6 months negotiating with particular customers. You went to Dubai and back millions of times. You did negotiations. You did demos and so on. But after 6 months, you realize that probably this contract is not going to be closed down. Of course, you are disappointed. You are extremely disappointed, because at the end of the day, your performance and your success is being measured with your sales targets. But in B2B sales, you don't really have time to think about this disappointment. You don't have a time to process this disappointment, because every rejection means that you are starting again and again. So meaning that you are looking for a new customer, you are reaching out to this new customer, you are setting up new calls, you do new meetings, you are providing new demos, you fly to Dubai back and forth. And if rejected again, you start again, over and over again. By describing your sales context, it might not come as a surprise to you to know that sales job, B2B sales job, is one of the most stressful jobs out there. It is second most stressful job out there. And that means that, for example, working in B2B sales is more stressful than being a nurse or being airline pilot. But here is the question. Does this stressful and uncertain environment actually change salespeople? And does it change their neuroticism? So now let's try to shift our focus a little bit more to neuroticism, because I'm sure that after this you kind of understand context of B2B sales. So now if we talk about neuroticism, it is considered to be highly relevant for B2B sales. As already mentioned, it is one of the big five personality traits. And neuroticism is defined as individuals' tendency to experience negative emotions, meaning that people who are highly neurotic, they experience anger, depression, anxiety, emotional instability quite often. These people tend to complain more. These people tend to react negatively when faced with ambiguous stimulus. If you think about research, well, academics around the world have been spending years and years trying to understand neuroticism a bit more. But findings of all those research are quite interesting. So first of all research that was done in the field of neuroticism was mostly focusing on a neuroticism as a stable trait. Then, if we move down a little bit more into sales research, findings are even more interesting, in a way that there are some findings conducted in B2B sales environment, which are suggesting that, let's say, highly neurotic salespeople and salespeople which are not that neurotic, there is no difference in terms of their performance, meaning that these B2B sales studies are suggesting that neuroticism is not related to performance. But in B2C context, findings are even more interesting, because there are some studies which are showing that more neurotic B2C salespeople are more successful. But there are some studies which are suggesting that more neurotic salespeople are less successful. To make this kind of ongoing debate, there was some recent study published in very good quality journal, and they are focusing on pharmaceutical industry. And they brought up findings which are suggesting that more neurotic salespeople in pharma industry are more successful in short run, but they are less successful in long run. So what you can observe here is that we don't have any consistent results. We don't really know how neuroticism is really behaving. We don't really know what is the relationship between neuroticism and performance outcomes. Maybe one of the reasons why we have this inconsistency is that maybe neuroticism is not a stable trait as we previously thought. So perhaps it's not stable, perhaps neuroticism is not a cause, but rather consequence. And in order to test this proposition, together with colleagues from Denmark, Germany, US, we conducted 5 studies. And in these 5 studies, we have reached out to 7,800 salespeople, but we also have reached out to 75,000 of non-salespeople. And we wanted to understand the relationship between neuroticism and performance outcomes, but we wanted also to understand, is neuroticism stable or not? So when we conducted the study, we differentiated between B2B salespeople, B2C salespeople, and people who are not working in sales. We use different research methods, we use different types of data, and our results this time are a little bit more consistent than previous research. Our results are suggesting that B2B salespeople are having higher neuroticism than B2C salespeople, and that this difference between the level of the neuroticism of B2B and B2C salespeople is increasing over time. So it is increasing over the tenure. Of course, we also compared it with non-salespeople, and again, B2B salespeople were having higher level of neuroticism than B2C salespeople and people who are not working in sales. So now you may wonder, well, okay, but why is this the case? And we try to understand why is this the case. And this is the background story. Usually, people who are taking jobs in B2B sales are people who would like to take action and who would like to take responsibility of their results. Usually those are the people who are having strong internal locus of control. Strong internal locus of control is something that we explain it as idea that your actions and your decisions determines your outcomes. And this is not strange, because at the end of the day, we know that in B2B sales, people are being rewarded based on their performance. So it is expected that people who want to take responsibility of their work are people who are going to B2B sales. But what is happening in reality? In reality, after being in B2B sales, people realize that B2B sales is an environment which is stressful, which is full of uncertain outcomes. And people tend to develop something that we call chance locus of control, meaning that when we are faced with stress, when we are faced with uncertain outcomes, we try to explain ourselves why these uncertain outcomes that we don't expect are really happening. And when we do not have some realistic explanation, we just explain that it is because of fate, because of luck, because of chance, which is chance locus of control. So meaning that people who are joining to B2B sales due to unpredicted factors which are surrounding B2B sales are trying to explain themselves why their success is not as they were planning it, and they're using chance locus of control for that. These people, when they are faced with a situation that they are kind of left on mercy of external environment, are becoming more neurotic over the time. We know that people who are joining to B2B sales, they have higher tendency to develop neuroticism over the time. And what do we do about that? At the moment, we don't do a lot, and we have to change it. Because there are many high-risk professions out there, but it seems that sales is also one of the high-risk professions. And in other high-risk professions, people are receiving a specialized mental health support. In sales, that's not the case. So let's think what we can change about it. First of all, what we can do about it is that talent management practices should be changed in a way that people and culture managers should think to try to develop a practice where they monitor personality of salespeople over the time. Nowadays, that's not the case, because usually personality tests are being administered once when a new employee is coming to the company, so meaning on the very beginning of the tenure of this new employee. These monitorings of personality can be done in many different forms and ways. So, for example, yes, you can do some formal tests, but you can also integrate in responsible manner artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is able to capture neurotic linguistic markers in the text. So this is just one example. Once when the system is put in place, system which is monitoring personality of salespeople throughout the time, we have to provide support system as well. So meaning that our B2B salespeople would need mental health support system. This mental health support system can be in a form of meditation or emotional coaching. And the goal of this system would be to help to B2B salespeople to deal with negative emotions, to deal with uncertainty, and not to develop neuroticism per se. And, you know, what is the final point of our research? I would say that there are many heroes out there, but there are also some heroes that we did not perceive as heroes per se. And these heroes maybe are heroes in a form of salespeople. And they just need a little bit of support to keep their personality growing. They are humans like you and me, who are coping every single day on different challenges which are being brought by their work, by their job. And thus, I'm standing here in front of you and I'm urging you to promote the idea about socially responsible companies which are taking care about personality of their employees. Thank you.